Let's go! Top 5 LSU targets for the class of 2021. This is an update from our video about a month or so ago, and guess what? I think there's going to be a wave of decommitments throughout college football, and I'm going to tell you why coming up. I'm also going to give you my full list, plus one sleeper at a position that LSU already has a ton of commits. So that's all coming up today. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. We are so close to 1.5K. I want to give out that Patrick Queen card, okay? And then at 2,000 subscribers, oh yeah, an autographed card from an LSU legend. Let's go. So the good news, Sage Ryan committed. We've already done so many videos on Sage. This, to me, was target number 1 when it comes to a pure football perspective. LSU desperately needed defensive backs. And then, of course, you get Jack Bech, who I love, one of the most productive Louisiana high school receivers ever, especially after this year, where he's just been tearing it up. Now, let's get it to the list. Let's go! So, as of right now, LSU only has 4 slots remaining with the 21 commitments. I do believe we will see a wave of decommitments. I really do, because of the, thing that's going on right now. LSU has recruited all throughout the country. There's going to be 1 or 2 players that are currently committed that's going to reconsider and play closer to home. It's just simple logic. And I think a lot of kids around the country are going to do the same thing. While there's only 4 slots remaining, I think a few more will open up over the next couple of weeks. Starting off here with number 5 on our list, Brian Thomas Jr. Now, he was higher on this list. He is a 6'4" receiver. Most of LSU's 4 receivers that they have committed aren't really that tall. So because he is such a huge target, that's why he was such an important recruit in this class. And he's been very quiet about his recruiting, but LSU has 4 wide receivers. And if you look at most of their receivers, outside of Terrace Marshall and Racy McMath, they have a lot of young talent at the position who's going to be there for a while. Kayshon Boutte. Oh yeah, Jaray Jenkins looks incredible. Who could forget about Coy Moore? Those are just 3. So LSU looks pretty strong at the position right now. Coming in at number 4 is Savion Byrd. Now look, Oklahoma's in the lead. I feel they've been in the lead along with SMU for a while. And I know a lot of LSU fans love them some Savion Byrd. But look, more than likely it's not going to happen, and they are not looking at him as the most important offensive tackle in this class. That will actually be someone else coming up on the list. Coming in at number 3, Bryce Foster, one of the best offensive guards in the country. LSU desperately needs offensive lineman help. And I know Anthony Bradford's in the wings, and a very popular name like a Cardell Thomas is also out there on LSU's roster. But let's be honest, if they were good enough right now, they would have already gotten some snaps. Jason Hines has been okay at right guard. Liam Shanahan has been decent as a center, and Ed Ingram has done well at left guard. But LSU, they could be high on their 2 3-star backups that they brought in from the class of 2020, and Hill and Martinez. But to get an elite offensive guard would be very massive for this class. And James Craig has made a decision at LSU. LSU won the Joe Moore Award last year. And ironically, they won it with not highly recruited players. James Craig has actually aimed for the elite offensive linemen. And there's a risk in that because all the big schools want the elite offensive linemen. And according to our data from the last couple of years, LSU has not necessarily done that well when it comes to getting the elite offensive linemen. In fact, Austin Deculus is one of the few top 10 tackles that they've recruited and gotten into LSU probably over the past 5 or 6 years. That number is probably not that high. Coming in at number 2, I know it's boring to talk about offensive linemen, but Tristan Leigh is the real deal for a reason. He is the modern-day offensive tackle, an elite athlete. Let's be honest, he just pops off the page. And there's a reason why he's a top 15 national player. So of the 5 stars, he is one of the elite 5 stars. And this would be a huge step forward for LSU, trying to get the 5-star linemen, like Alabama, who year in and year out get 5-star offensive linemen. Now, that doesn't mean you can't win with unheralded offensive linemen. It's, in fact, the exact opposite. LSU in 2019 showed that, but historically speaking, the 5 stars are 5 stars for a reason, especially when it comes to the trenches. Now, coming up, I have a few sleepers. I actually have 2 sleepers, but let's be honest. Number 1 is Maason Smith. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, what about KOREY Foreman, the number 1 overall player? Well, the truth is, and you can ask any recruiting writer this, obviously each and every recruit makes their own decisions. And any recruit can go anywhere. And I'm done trying to guess anything. It is highly unlikely, if Maason Smith goes to a different school, that KOREY Foreman goes to LSU. I think if LSU's to get KOREY Foreman, they got to get Maason Smith as well. And it's pretty simple from reading their quotes and following their recruitment that they are very much more than likely going to be a package deal. But the more likely scenario would be Maason Smith coming to LSU and KOREY Foreman not going to LSU, then vice versa. I know those are like fancy graphic things with my hands. What do I do with my hands? And from a football standpoint and a position of need standpoint, Tristan Leigh is actually number 1. He's not only a higher rated prospect, LSU just needs more depth and help and elite prospects on the offensive line. And something else, if that happens, there's no way, I think, if KOREY Foreman decides to come to LSU, that all the other LSU defensive ends that LSU has committed, which currently that number sits at 5-ish, 6, depending on how you see if the players transition a linebacker or the other side of the football. But they have a lot of defensive ends committed. So because of that, it's a little complicated, because I think KOREY Foreman deciding to come to LSU will definitely play a role into the rest of the class. So that's going to be very fascinating to see. But because of that potential, Maason Smith is number 1. And according to my personal sources, Ed Orgeron views Maason Smith as the number 1 player in this class and his top priority. Now, those are just my sources. I might be wrong about that, but come on. Ed Orgeron, defensive line coach, he knows how important a defensive tackle, especially a dominant one, could be. And another thing is, if Maason Smith and KOREY Foreman both come, I can easily see both of them as a defensive tackle duo in a 4-3. I think KOREY Foreman, if you actually look at his height and weight and some of his high school film, it's very similar to a guy by the name of Aaron Donald. So, yeah, and Aaron Donald turned out to be okay. Something else about KOREY Foreman's recruitment, a lot of it has changed because he's seen the Californian, our boy Elias Ricks, kill it. He and Elias Ricks are good friends. And then Rajon Davis, coming from Mater Dei High School, is obviously one of the most important pieces of the 2021 class already. I want to give you 2 sleepers right here. The first isn't actually a recruit. It's actually just something very ambiguous. And I hate using the word ambiguous because it is ambiguous. Get it? Because it's okay. Anyway, the JUCO transfer. Whoever that may be, a JUCO or just a transfer in general. Look, the scholarship reduction that LSU has self-imposed, 4 scholarships for this year, 4 scholarships for the next, that doesn't include the 25 potential commits that could come to LSU, it's just LSU next year will only be allowed to have 81 scholarship football players, which sounds pretty bad, but it's probably not as bad as you think. LSU is actually already under that number right now, but because of that, you desperately need players that can play right now. Jabril Cox, Ollie Gay, Liam Shanahan, all transfers. One's a JUCO, two are just transfers. And then from the year before, well, win a national championship if you don't have transfers. So I know we focus so much on high school recruiting because these are specific players, especially now that LSU has turned up the heat on in-state Louisiana guys, and a lot of you are familiar. In fact, a lot of you that live in Lafayette and live in Houma, this is obviously a very big deal to you, and to me, being from New Roads, or my family being from New Roads, that was a big deal to us, and we put so much focus on them. Well, in actuality, there's not many of those Louisiana players that are going to play in year one, compared to transfers who actually are ready to play right now. And that's a very important thing, considering LSU's depth is going to be very weird over these next few years. So, the extra sleeper player is actually kind of weird because he plays a position that LSU already has a lot of players. It's at defensive end, and his name is Shamar Turner. Shamar Turner is really, really solid. I would compare him to actually a former Alabama defensive end. Courtney Upshaw, who's just a really solid player. Not a spectacular athlete, not someone that just blows you away, but he plays at a very competitive high school, DeSoto, Texas. He plays against some of the best offensive linemen in the country. A lot of the best offensive linemen come from the state of Texas. He's also very scheme versatile. He played in a 4-3. He played defensive end. He played defensive tackle. And every time I watch him, I see a high IQ player. Now, like I said, not a can't miss guy, but I would say that a lot of the defensive ends that LSU has committed in this class look to me to be more 3-4-ish outside linebackers. I think Turner is actually a better fit if LSU decides to stick with Bo Pelini's 4-3 moving forward. Now, a lot of you don't like that, but LSU might be in a financial position where they're going to have to stick with Bo Pelini. Now, it's interesting because on this channel, we've had so many non-LSU fans comment. Now, some of them are trolls, but most of them are knowledgeable fans from other fan bases. And this comes from Brian. You may not want to hear from me as an Auburn alum, but I was surprised by LSU's defense. I'm generally used to seeing LSU put superior athletes on the field, keep it simple schematically, and let them fly around the field and make plays. Thank you, Brian. And here's the thing. It actually benefits him that LSU wasn't sound defensively. And he is even shocked by this. And he's not the first person that said that. We've had Missouri commenters and Mississippi State commenters say the same thing. And if you watch the film study, and I want people to know this, I don't like being critical of anyone. Max says, I think we need to go to a 3-2-6 and keep everything in front of us because the players are out of position. I do think LSU needs to play more comfortable zone until they figure out man coverage. Because one thing LSU was, and it gets more into detail in the film study, when you play man coverage against these teams that do a lot of pre-snap motion, what happens to your defensive backs throughout the course of a game is they get tired, okay? Because they're running back and forth. That's my back and forth graphic. They're running so much because, they're playing man coverage. And guess what Gus Malzahn and these offensive coordinators are going to do? They're going to keep doing it. And this is versus he. Watching this during AP Calculus. Let's go. I love it. Now, let's be honest. Us LSU fans, most of us are not the smartest people in the world, including myself. I was stupid enough in high school to take AP Calculus with a first year calculus teacher. Now, she turned out to be a really good, award-winning calculus teacher, but I was awful. I don't remember a single thing from calculus. Not a single thing. In fact, I don't remember a lot from LSU, and that is mostly my fault. But shout out to you versus he. Don't be distracted, because you need in life to not know about taxes, not know about rent, not know about important stuff like loans. You need to learn the shape of a parabola, okay? Because, important lessons in high school, like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, that is the most important thing you learn in high school. Not knowing how to audit your business, okay? They don't teach you that stuff in high school. Stuff that actually helps. Anyway, that's enough for my rants. Power Hour LSU. Boom! Okay, for those of you that stuck out to the end, here's a photo of my mom's gumbo. Woo! Look at that! Look at that gumbo!